Hello, and welcome to this filmmaker's commentary on Rebecca. This is the second documentary I made, and it marks the start of the films I made during the second year of university. Not really sure what to say about the behind the scenes of making this documentary, since from what I remember, it pretty much went straightforward and pretty organised, but I will highlight how we put the film together and what works well and what could be improved. So, this documentary is about a former student's account of sexual harassment and the lack of proper action by the university administration. It's drastically different as a documentary in more ways than one, especially in comparison to Christmas Incorporated. Whilst Christmas Incorporated has a few interviews with different people, finding out their opinions on the key question to that documentary, this one mainly focuses on the individual, Rebecca, and her retelling and point of view of the situation that happened to her. So it is kind of a heavier subject matter, and as filmmakers, we're not journalists, so as filmmakers we wanted to kind of focus on the individual story rather than go around interviewing as many people as possible and get all these different takes on it and such, because that would just be confusing. And yeah, as I say, we were filmmakers trying to tell this personal story to our interviewee here, and when coming up with ideas for a documentary, we heard of this story in the news at the time. But of course, being current students at the university, we were quite apprehensive of the outcome of what would happen if we did follow this up, and if we finished it, and the university obviously would be like, it's not on. But we did talk to our lecturer, obviously, and he said it should all be fine, pretty much, and gave us the go ahead. I think his line of argument was that the university does welcome criticism, obviously, and I guess maybe being film students that we were in university, it was more okay, because if an outside film crew maybe came and poked around and such, it would be a little bit more inappropriate. But because it's coming from students who know the university and in and out and are working on it within its walls, it was better maybe. But you can see, if you watched it all the way through yesterday without the filmmaker's commentary, you can see how we've made this documentary so that we can both convey the interviewee's feelings and the story she has to tell, yet also a message by the end of the film. And as documentary making goes, though, I think we definitely improved upon most of the techniques that we learnt throughout first year. Shot-wise, it's pretty standard and basic, just two camera setup, one with a mid shot and one with a close-up during the interview bits. Then we just edit between those, usually to emphasise a point the interviewer is making, but other times to cut out distractions on screen, such as the interviewee's movements and sort of gestures, because that'd just be a bit too distracting. But I do feel the lighting in these on this interview is a bit underlit. It's mostly natural lighting, but with a key light you can see on the side of her face how it casts some shadows there, just to draw your focus towards her as the subject and what she's saying. And setting-wise for the interview, this is surprisingly in student accommodation, and it looks pretty clean and tidy and good. Yeah, I didn't even realise looking back until looking back now. It's quite good. Although it's a bit weird with that those speakers on the side there. You have to try and keep the background kind of plain-ish, but just a little bit more interesting than, say, a blank white wall, because that would just be boring. The cutaway footage of her in the dance studio was provided by her, and it just works to show a little bit of Rebecca's background and hobbies. And we're very much influenced by some of the examples of short documentaries we were watching, which did the exact same thing. The other cutaways here, I took an afternoon to film around the university campus, generally thinking what looked artsy, and the final results worked quite well. And then this radio interview by the BBC was a great piece to include. I feel like it really gives an extra professional element to the whole short film and added weight to the documentary. Although this final shot, if we didn't have that man walking out those doors just then, it would be a bit better. Don't know why we didn't cut that out. It just seems a bit silly. But there we go, and that was Rebecca. Yeah, I'm super proud of that as a documentary. Much better than the previous film we saw last week, Revenge Solves Everything. And yeah, I like to think this is sort of the marker, the starting point, the first short film that begins to show good quality and improvements in my abilities as a filmmaker. Obviously, with a team on that. And yeah, quite proud of it. So next week's short film is Stick Together. Now this one, again, yeah, quite proud of. This was actually quite a good little one. I feel over the course of sixth form and university, a lot of people tend to gravitate towards kind of darker themes and moody set films. You'll see what I mean when I talk about it next week, but Stick Together is pretty much the first light-hearted romance film that I tried to make with fellow filmmakers Stephen and Brad, and then this is the sort of first time we set up Cutting Room Productions as well, so we'll be getting into the Cutting Room Productions films, which is quite cool. So yeah, I will see you next week for Stick Together. Bye!